Welcome to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Today's guest is SportsCenter anchor and host of Inside the Crease, Nabil Karim. Nabil, thanks for being on today's episode, man. I'm super excited to talk about your journey through the industry and what has definitely been a wild trip so far from the Great White North all the way down to Bristol, Connecticut.
I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
So, Nabil, you've been busy with doing lots of things for ESPN, and you've been living now down in the US for a handful of years. What are some of the first things that you noticed right away that were some differences when you moved down to Connecticut for ESPN that you did like, and some that maybe you weren't so fond of at first?
Are you talking about like work or living?
It could be both. It could be work, or it could be just life outside of work and being in a different country.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I've moved across the country for work before. So I went from Vancouver to Prince George to Winnipeg to Toronto. So I've done the, move within the country, and I kind of had that down and I know how to do that. But moving countries was just, wow. It is a whole different ball game. And luckily, ESPN is great. They have this, basically this moving team that, it's like a concierge service that they overlook everything. And if they didn't have that service for me, it's like a point person who overlooked everything and was giving me, updates on, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. I would probably not be here because you just don't know how to do it. So it was a difficult process to move over, but they made it as easy as possible for me. I would say one of the biggest things from moving from like Toronto, and I lived in Etobicoke, which is a pretty big suburb outside of Toronto, to Connecticut, is that, the size of the place, right? I'm living in a place called Avon right now, which is a great little town here, but it's a town of about 18,000 people. And I've never lived in a place that small. Even growing up in Vancouver, I lived in Burnaby. Even when I was in Winnipeg, I just never lived in a place this small. So that was an adjustment. But for us, it's actually been great. I know there are a lot of people, ESPN kind of gets this rap of Bristol, Connecticut and West Hartford and some of these places where people live around here in Connecticut, and it's not the greatest scene for single people and people who want to go out and have a great time, although there are cool spots here, don't get me wrong. But for me, at my point in my life right now, I have 2 young kids, and it's actually a great spot for kids. So we live in this town, again, called Avon, and it's so family friendly. It's so geared towards kids and all the activities. And yeah, there's been the pandemic, which has been a complete wrinkle for everybody. But at the same time, it's been kind of cool just to see all the things my kids have been able to do here. So we kind of look at it, and people always kind of bug me, and they're like, do you live there? And I'm like, listen, I don't compare it to Toronto. I don't compare Connecticut and Toronto. I've never done that. I didn't compare Vancouver to Toronto, where a lot of people do that. I never understood that. They're 2 different cities and two different lifestyles. And for me, this was just a new experience, a new adventure. And that's how me and my wife and my kids, by choice, no choice actually, kind of had to roll with it. And we love it. We really we've embraced kind of the small town living in that sense, and doing a lot more local things than we did when we lived in Etobicoke. So it's been great for our family. That was one adjustment we made. And there are certain things where, like in Toronto, to go like just to the mall. We have a mall here. It's nothing like, what we have in Toronto, where we have like 6, 7 great malls, all these stores accessible and that kind of thing. So just for little things like that, sometimes it's difficult, but we have everything we need here. People are really nice. That transition's actually been great. Work-wise, just coming to ESPN, everything's just so much bigger. And I think one of the things I noticed right off the bat was just the resources that we have at ESPN, and there's a reason why, it is what it is, and it's just the biggest sports network out there. And one of the cool things was when I first got here, they gave me about 3.5 weeks, I think it was roughly in that range, to just like sit back, watch, and kind of observe. And they're like, hey, listen, I know you're gonna be bored by the end of this thing, but just take advantage of that and just kind of learn the resources and the different things that we have here that you may have not had at TSN in Toronto. There's just so many things, even just like jargon and just little TV things that we used to say at TSN. They don't say here at ESPN. So you just got to learn these little things just a TV talk. And so it was really important for me to have that time. And I think that really helped me out a lot. But, at the end of the day, the broadcast are the broadcast. But I think that was one of the biggest adjustments for me, is just the size of this place. It's huge. Like before the pandemic, I think there were 4,000 employees that come to the Bristol campus. And so there's 18 buildings, I think it is. It's just huge. It looks like a little mini college or something. And so I think just the vast size of things, getting to know people and just all the things around you that can complement you and help you was probably the biggest adjustment I had to make.
100%. And for a place like ESPN's headquarters, you're right. Campus is the perfect term to use because it is like a university or a college. There are so many people there. There's tons of buildings. There's so many places you can go. And that 3-week adjustment period sounds like a good time to really understand and learn your footing, because that transition might not be as smooth for people that, even if you've come from TSN in Canada, the biggest that we have up here definitely doesn't compare at all in terms of the size and all the nuts and bolts that go into the operation of ESPN. Was there something that took you by surprise when you got there that maybe you didn't expect, or was it pretty clear cut with what you were kind of anticipating before getting there?
I mean, there's always some unknown. Like when I got the opportunity, when I got the job, you're excited. You don't see too many Canadians do it. So there's not, a path really to follow. There were, I was talking to Adnan Verkalot prior to coming to ESPN, because he had kind of done it. He was kind of the last guy to do it. And you kind of roll with it when you get here. I think, were there any major surprises? Probably not. Because again, what we were doing at TSN and all the things that I had done at TSN had really set me up for this moment. And I think I was really confident. I think I go back to every job that I've gotten, and I've always kind of been hired on potential. I was never really ready for the job. And I think this was the first time I thought to myself, I was really confident that I was ready for this. And yeah, there's still the unknown. But when I got here, and again, easing into that process of that first 3.5 weeks, I kind of realized, okay, look, I know I could step in and I could do a pretty good job. And again, you just got to get more and more comfortable. It's working with different talent, which I'm so lucky. I mean, you're working with the best of the best. So everyone makes you feel pretty comfortable and allow you to be you. And I think that was, again, the message too. When I got to ESPN was just be yourself, man. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to emulate, one of the other anchors. Just be yourself, because that's the reason we got you. We didn't get you to come here and try to be somebody else. Just be who you are. And I think that was really comforting, just knowing that, hey, A, I belong, and B, I could just be myself. And as you go, you get more reps, just like anything in life, you just get better.
And especially that unique aspect of your personality is something that you cannot forget when you're working in a role like a television anchor, because I'm sure as sports fans know who watch football games or basketball games, it's so difficult for your mind to shift away from the familiar voices and faces that we see whenever we're listening or watching, whether it's the highlights after the game or the game itself. And I know as a fan, when I'm watching sports, it's hard to avert away from hearing Mike Breen say bang when you're watching the NBA. Like that's what you think of. And I can only imagine when you're sitting there at the desk, like, well, I've seen Dutch do this for how many years? I've seen Jennifer Edger do this for how many years? Yeah. Do I feel like I'm subconsciously, taking on some of the things that they do? But I'm sure on the flip side of that working alongside such amazing legends of the industry, that there will be things that they will be able to teach you as well.
Yeah, totally. You know what's kind of weird, and I think people on both sides of the border don't kind of know this, is that when I got to TSN, when I started working with Dutch, when I worked with Jen, Jay and Dan, when you kind of get sprinkled in with them and people like that, Rod Smith and so forth, that was kind of shocking to me. And I was young at the time and still really raw. And to just be working with those guys I was kind of in awe, right? And when I got here, you're working with all these legends too, but I wasn't in awe in the same way, because in Canada, we don't grow up with these these guys on SportsCenter in the US, right? We have our own SportsCenter. That's why when I got to our TSN, I was an I grew up watching them. I didn't grow up watching, the guys over here in the States. And I think that was kind of an advantage for me when I got here, because I knew the names. You obviously know the names, and you kind of know what they're about. But at the same time, I didn't grow up watching them. And so I didn't have that kind of relationship with them as a viewer. And so I think that actually helped in a sense for me to go in, step in. But again, like every time I work, I'm so blessed, man. Like every time I work with these guys, I can pick up something. I learn something new, and whether they know it or not, I'm picking up on, oh, okay, this is how they did that. Okay. And like, maybe that's not the way I can do it, but I can pick up a tip here or there. Or maybe I can adjust and do it this way. So you're always kind of learning, but just, one of the signs of just like true greatness and that we have here is that I've filled in with so many different people, and, there's always some kind of chemistry, which is not always the case. And there's always some kind of chemistry because that other person is just so good, so talented, and they're able to kind of bring you in, and whatever way that might be, you kind of fit in. And I think that's just really special about this place.
When you have that chemistry working alongside really talented broadcasters and anchors, then it almost makes it seem as if there is no transition to the viewer. And the greatest, I'm trying to remember the quote, but it's a great artist I think it's a great performer makes the art look very easy. It looks very smooth and like there's no problems, but behind the scenes, it's a lot more work than what you see from in front of the television. So when you are working behind the scenes, or since you know more of the behind the scenes work, what are some of the things that the viewer doesn't see that you think is maybe an interesting part of the job, or maybe it's not what it seems to people who are watching on television when it airs?
Yeah, I think just one of the things that some people probably understand, other people don't. It's just like the chaos that's happening behind the scenes. And the two anchors are usually like the last line of defense, right? Because you're hearing us, and whatever comes out, if we're panicked, you can tell we're panicked. But, in my ear, you have a producer in your ear. We all wear this IFB in our ear, and sometimes you can see it on air or not. But you got a producer in your ear, you got a director sometimes in your ear, you got somebody counting you down in your ear. And so there's a lot of traffic coming through. And sometimes you're not hearing anything, but sometimes when we have breaking news, or, hey, we didn't get a script, or something's going wrong, something like the viewer at home has no idea. But we're getting that traffic from our producers. It's a team effort, people behind the scenes. It's incredible what we're able to do as a team. But then it's your producer usually relaying information to you. So, for example, there's times where there's a play that just happened. Well, we couldn't turn it around in time to get us a script because we're on air and we haven't seen it. And I have a producer just telling me, okay, added play. And I'm talking to you on TV right now, and I got him telling me added play, LeBron James, fourth quarter, hits the game winning, whatever it is, something like that. And I have to relay that to you. But people at home wouldn't understand that, if we have breaking news, we have this whole rundown. It's called the rundown, where it's just like all our games are placed here and here. This is what's happening next kind of thing. We throw that out the window sometimes. And that's when we go to our breaking news. And now we're just, flying by the seat of our pants and just talking to people, trying to accumulate more and more information and kind of go from there. And that's kind of happened to me too. Happened early to me with the Antonio Brown story. But when Antonio Brown requested a trade on Instagram, I think it was, with the Raiders, or wanted to be released. I think wanted to be released, right? We were doing a morning show that day, had written all this stuff. We get on air. I'm not even kidding. 3 minutes into the show, my producer's like, Antonio Brown, blah, 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 blah. We threw out the whole thing. We went 4 hours live on Antonio Brown, and we just kept bringing in different analysts and so forth. And again, it's just a producer telling me in my ear, here's what's coming next. Okay, talk to Schefter. You talk to him for a few minutes, and then Jay's working. My co-anchor was Jay Harris at the time. And we just kind of went through, and then commercial breaks to kind of take a breath. But these are just some of the things that happen once in a while. Sometimes it's, not like that. But there is a lot more chaos going on behind the scenes than just two people talking sports. It's a big production to put it all out there.
And if I remember correctly from a podcast I listened to with you earlier, you talked about your audition at ESPN and about how part of the audition was preparing for that chaos, or how you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, since there's not really any amount of teaching that can be done to prepare you for an experience where you're ad-libbing, or where you throw out an entire script and you have to go by the seat of your pants, or you know, you're flying in such an unexpected environment. So basically, just, I'm sure that reps have really carried you then to learn how to be in that uncomfortable environment. Or what are some of the maybe key moments that you had working at TSN that really helped you prepare for the audition at ESPN?
Yeah, and I think we had that. Actually, it was more of a case in my audition at TSN where they did that to me, where they threw up a couple boards that weren't correct. The prompter went out one time, and they wanted to see how you react, right? Because these things happen. Like just a couple shows ago I did last week, prompter's not working. You gotta go on the fly, right? And sometimes we don't use the prompter, but for the most part, at SportsCenter we do. For hosting stuff, it's a little bit different, but yeah, you just kind of go on the fly then, and you know, you hope for the best, and you gotta just remain calm, because again, the people at home, they don't know, frankly, they don't care. They just, you know, you need to have a good production. So things happen. It's live TV, but I think again, like you said, all the reps that I've done, all the reps that any anchor in the situation has done over the year, it kind of prepares you in a sense, right? Where you just become a little bit more calm. You understand things can happen, and just, you know, calm yourself down. You got to take in, what do we have? What can I get out there right now? And I think that's really important. And I think just the different experiences I had at TSN, where we had some of those times where sometimes it doesn't go well. Let's be honest. Sometimes it does not go well. And there are times when you leave and you're just like, oh my God, like I look like such an idiot. But sometimes in those situations, it feels worse than it actually is. But you learn from them. I go back to that Antonio Brown situation, and I was like, oh my God. And this show was at like 7 a.m. You know, you're kind of tired. You're still fairly new there, but it was such a great moment for me, because being able to complete that show, and it went really well, I think, for the most part with Jay. And I was leaning on Jay and his experience, because he does this kind of thing all the time, a lot more with breaking news. But I thought it was a really good moment for me, because now I can build on that, right? And I'm glad it happened early on in my tenure at ESPN. So now I know we do have breaking news coming up. I know I can handle it. And we do a lot more breaking news here at ESPN, just because we have way more shows than we did at TSN. And so, yeah, it just comes along with experience, honestly. And we're lucky, again, behind the scenes, we have this great team. Our crew is just incredible, and communication is so important. We got good people who communicate really well. We can get it out there. And it's also a thing too, I think, with breaking news, to let the viewer know that, hey, this is happening right now. We're finding out just as you are, and kind of bring them in on that little secret. Like, we don't have to be perfect. Things can happen on the fly. And just to let you know, hey, it's happening in real time right now. So let's kind of figure this out together.
For sure. And especially for one like the Antonio Brown story, you'd have to even think that, yes, the viewer is really excited to feel like they're being reeled in and almost taking part of that experience of learning about it as it's happening, because that creates familiarity with the fact that the anchors are learning just as they are. So then I think that creates a more engaging program, especially when you watch things that don't have scripts or don't have teleprompters, when you're watching the draft or when you're watching the panel on, you know, CFL or NFL. Just being able to sit down and listen to the sheer knowledge that the analysts have, and have them, for them to share as much insight as they can in basically 60 seconds or less, minus the halftime show, is also such a really fun experience, I think, for the viewer, because you know that it isn't scripted and you don't know which direction it can really go. And sometimes, even if it's not perfect, that's what makes television more entertaining than if you're just, okay, well, you're sitting there reading the teleprompter. I could probably do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, or people have those kinds of thoughts. So, and have you ever had a chance to do the analysis stuff? You talked about being the host of the inside the rink, correct?
In the crease.
Or inside the crease.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So do you get to do a little more analysis stuff with inside the crease, or how is that experience?
Yeah, like I've never had I wouldn't say I've ever had a role of being an analyst. I've never played the game at that level, so I don't think I qualify as an analyst. But as a host of Inside the Crease, or In the Crease, I should say, as a host of In the Crease, you get a little more leeway. When we're doing highlights, and a lot of the shows you're by yourself. We don't have an analyst. So it's you just running through highlights, and it's a highlight-driven show, and you get to add your personality. You get to add a little bit of your thoughts in there, which is really cool. But for the most part, no, I would never say I've never been an analyst or in a situation where my opinion or my breakdown of the game is what's been asked for. But I think opinion, I should say, no, that's not the case. Opinion we do get in once in a while, but a breakdown like the X's and O's of the game, right? But hosting is a lot of fun. I love hosting. I love working with a panel and working with different analysts. I think just that chemistry and having that conversation can be so much fun. And you're right, it's unscripted. That stuff is completely unscripted. There's no prompter for any of that. So that's a lot of fun. And hopefully I can do some more of that too at ESPN.
So would you say then that you prefer hosting versus being an anchor, or do you find that it's pretty equal with the experience overall? Because you do get more of that flexibility as a host, but then as the anchor, there are also the benefits that come with that as well.
Yeah, they both have their benefits, just like you said, right? SportsCenter, it's exciting, man. When you hear the music right before the show, there's a thrill to it. It's hard for me to explain, but there's this energy. We call it the tease. You hear the tease where they tease, hey, this is coming up on SportsCenter, blah, 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 blah. And then you hear that music. There was a thrill to SportsCenter. And I feel blessed to be, just one of the names that's done this show. But at the same time, hosting something, it's just a different feeling, a different it satisfies me in a different way, in a sense, just because I love, again, having those conversations. You get more time to talk to somebody. You get to focus in on one sport, which is really cool. I did a lot of that stuff at TSN, right? I did a lot of the Raptors. We did a lot of hockey at TSN. So I do love doing that stuff also. And I think it's good to be versatile, right? I don't want to just do one thing. I want to be versatile. I know I can be versatile. That's what I did at TSN. And I think that was a selling point for me when I was coming to ESPN, was I can do a lot of different things. And it's now about getting the opportunities. And when I get it, taking it and try to run with it a little bit.
So to specifically touch upon that transition from going to ESPN from TSN, how did you go through the process of getting the audition, getting the opportunity to go down and to at least show yourself? Because that cross-border work experience can sometimes be quite rare or difficult to find, especially in such a smaller industry like sports media. So take me through a little bit what that experience was like and how the opportunity came up for the position at ESPN.
I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I'll kind of dumb it down for you. And I think in the last couple of years at TSN, I just kind of realized, I had this great job. I love the people I work with. I have so many great friends there, but I just figured I could do more, and I knew I could do more. And again, our industry is shrinking so much in Canada, and even in the States to a degree, but in Canada, it's just so much smaller. And I just wanted to be challenged, and I knew I could do more. And that's when I started thinking about ESPN. Was never in the cards. I never thought about it. Being at TSN, that was always the goal when I came, when I came out of school, or TSN SportsNet, whatever it was, a national network. And again, I just thought about it in those last couple of years at TSN and connected with somebody from ESPN. They did not have any jobs at the time. However, they were interested. And so they brought me down to do an audition and just to see how I'd be on the set, how I'd feel. I'd see, we talked about the audition, how you'd kind of work your way through certain situations. And it went really well. And again, they were very clear. We don't have anything, but we kept in touch. And that's, networking is such a big part of this industry. And we kept in touch. They watched more of my material as I went around. I think it was for that year, it was about a year. And I got great feedback from them. And I knew there was an investment there because they were still continuing to keep in contact with me. They were invested in how I was doing. And from there, when the position became available, that's when they called me and they said, do you want to come down? And so it's networking is so key in this industry. And I always tell, young journalists, people who kind of, seek my advice, is that when you do get an opportunity to talk to people who make decisions, you don't need to ask for a job, especially when you're first meeting. You don't need to ask for a job. Even just getting some feedback on your work can go a long way. It can go a really long way. And again, great example of that is just ESPN. We knew they didn't have anything yet. We just showed them my stuff. They were interested in me as a person. And from there, that kind of thing grew. And now I'm here.
An incredible story. And to think about all that goes into the journey, and especially that transition, have you had much time to even reflect on it? Or is it something that it just happens so fast? You just transition, you're ready to go, and you're just enjoying the process. And then one day it just kind of hits you like, whoa, I'm here. This is crazy.
Yeah. The transition, just for me accepting the job, to telling TSN, and to kind of going through that and then leaving. And my wife, my wife was pregnant at the time, so we were expecting a child. It was still a crazy time. We already had my son, and it was a whirlwind, man. Like it was crazy. I did have I think I had almost 2 months off, or a month and a half off, but just again, planning a move to the United States, moving countries, that just took up all my time. And it was hard just to place what had happened. And so, I did take some time after to realize and just to sit back and take it in that, hey, listen, this is a big accomplishment. This is a really cool thing. And me and my wife talked about, we don't know what's going to happen. We're taking a chance. And we said, let's just go and again, called it a new adventure, and let's try it and let's see what happens. And sometimes I sit back, you look back and driving to ESPN, or, walking around sometimes late at night because there's nobody there now. It's really quiet, and I'm there at these crazy late hours, and you kind of appreciate. It's more of an appreciation just of, wow, I'm very lucky to be here. I'm very lucky to have this opportunity. And it's just a reminder to make the most of it. I'll look back on my career later on and assess how it went. But at this point, I'm living in the moment, always trying to strive for more. But I think sometimes when I do walk around that campus, I do have a greater sense of appreciation of, hey, I've worked really hard to get to this point. I've been lucky at the same time, so I'm very appreciative of that. But now it's an opportunity to continue to take advantage and just see how far I can take this thing.
Being in the process and in the midst of it can be definitely really enjoyable, but also there's a flip side to it when you talk about the future, and people always want to make sure that they're living in the present and that they're not too focused on the past or too focused on what's going to happen. But at the same time, there must have been some of that reflection, as you mentioned earlier, that made you think about what there is beyond what you were doing at TSN. So in the context of ESPN, I know that you've been there for only a short while now. Have you ever had those thoughts of foresight as to what other greater things you might be looking to achieve as your career develops at ESPN?
Yeah, you think about it for sure. I think my first year was more about really just establishing myself and getting comfortable. And I think that was really, really important for me to kind of come in and just kind of, be real steady right away. And I think that was really good. It worked out really well. The feedback I was getting was good. And then we went into this venture on this app called Quibi. I don't know if you remember that, but they launched during the pandemic, and we had this show that we were doing on there called The Replay. And that was a bit of a tough going there. Things didn't work out, unfortunately. And so that was about 7-8 months of my life right there. And then I switched back to primarily being on SportsCenter. And so I've kind of gotten things back on track and now kind of, running and going again. But I think I'm in my third year now at ESPN. And yeah, you think about, I think it's important. Like, I don't think you should come in and be satisfied where you are, because I'm definitely not satisfied. A, I know I need to get a lot better. And B, you have bigger goals, right? And so I'm big on creating short-term and long-term goals for yourself. I think you should always, constantly assess those things. And again, my short-term goal when I got to ESPN was, again, just kind of getting comfortable and being part of the fabric. And I think I've kind of done that, and I have to continue to do that. But then as far as, the next X amount of years, I think definitely, looking to grow within the company. And the one great thing about this place is that there's always lots of opportunities, lots and lots of opportunities. And so anytime I'm able to get a chance to host, I got a chance to host some college basketball and some college football, some college hockey here. I would say within the last 6 months, that stuff's really important to me. Stuff like that would be part of my short-term goal, is to get to host more things along with my SportsCenter duties.
So you mentioned college hockey. Now that ESPN has the rights to the NHL very soon now, is that something that you enjoy covering as well? Because up in Canada, the NHL is ginormous, whereas down in the States, it really depends on where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited that it's coming to ESPN, and I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't want to be part of it. But we'll see. They're definitely in the stages of planning and going forward with all of this, and I hope I'm part of it. We'll see. But no, I love hockey, man, and again, coming from Canada, that's that is the sport, and that's the sport I've covered for the last decade. And I have a strong passion for basketball. It's kind of like 1A, 1B. Basketball is kind of my favorite sport, but it's a 1A, 1B kind of thing. And, I think I could add a lot of value to the package as far as, being some kind of host or whatever it might be. But yeah, I'd love to be part of it. And hopefully, when we're talking again next year, I'm doing something hockey wise, but, if not, I know they'll bring in the right people, because I think it's just going to be great for the game. I think it's just going to be so good for the game. And when you look at the NHL right now and you look at the young players, man, with the way the game's being played, the pace, the skill, everything, to now be able to bring that package to ESPN and we can really try to elevate it, I think it's just phenomenal for hockey.
I 100% agree on that. And it's been such a long time since the NHL has been covered on ESPN. And I think for that to be able to return, and especially mention the young players and how the league is evolving for the better, it would be super beneficial to the league's marketing overall as well, because I must admit, hockey definitely has never been my favorite sport, but at the same time, I've grown such an amazing appreciation for it, and seeing how impactful it can be in the US and different communities that maybe haven't been as familiar with it over the years, such as the Dallases or the Tampa Bays. I'm really excited to see where ESPN can take the NHL to, because they definitely need a lot more injection of marketing and just getting more people familiar with the game in the US, because there's no shortage of that in Canada. People all across the country are going to watch the NHL no matter what, and especially people in Vancouver, back home, are going to watch the Canucks till their eyes bleed no matter what. So getting that popularity raised in the US is something I think will be really exciting to look forward to. Now, Nabil, we're getting towards the end of our time on today's episode, so I wanted to wrap up with a few fun questions and, maybe test some knowledge, maybe see a little bit of your sports fandom, and before we part for today.
Let's do it. I'm probably going to fail, but whatever. Let's go. Okay.
Favorite Raptors game that you've ever been to live?
Favorite Raptors game I've ever been to live? Wow, that's a good one. I'm going to say this was heartbreaking, but it's still probably my favorite game. I was at Game 5 of the NBA Finals. And to this day, I will never forget when Kawhi hit I think it was back-to-back threes, and then Nick Nurse calls a timeout in that fourth quarter. I don't know why I called it a timeout, but called the timeout, and then they end up losing that game. The emotion in that building, that game was, I've never seen anything like it. I've covered the Raptors playoffs for X amount of years. I was there as a fan that time, and me and my friend were there. And I still remember in that timeout, like I was more emotional in that timeout when I thought they were going to win the championship, because I had a free pass, by the way, to hang out all night in Toronto that night too. My wife was like, "Go for it, have fun." Yeah, just the emotion of that was just, oh man, it was something different. And then when they lost and Kyle didn't really get that shot off or was blocked, and just sitting there, we sat there, I can't remember, but maybe 10 minutes, just no one's talking. And so it was heartbreaking, but still probably my favorite game that I've ever been to. Just the experience of it all was really cool.
You mentioned game 5, and the second you said the words, I was like, oh, the roller coaster of emotions. Like I'm telling you, when I was watching that game, it was happening so fast. I couldn't even sit there believing what I was watching. And I was like, if Kyle hits this for the championship, I think my bones are going to jump out of my body. But then when he missed, I remember like more than 10 minutes, like I didn't say a word for like maybe hours. And my girlfriend's just looking at me like, is everything okay? And all the thoughts were running through my mind. It was like, they were up 3-1.
That's what I was saying.
Then
my daughter was born just a couple days before. And so when I had an opportunity to get these tickets, my wife was going to come with me, and we were like, we can't, because, she'd be breastfed and so forth or whatever. And obviously we were like, my mother-in-law was there, but it wasn't going to work out. So a good friend of mine wanted to jump in. We jumped in. And again, my wife's just like, go have fun. When they win tonight, because she was being positive, when they win tonight, go party in Toronto, experience it all. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, that whole thing. Right. And I still remember we walked out and we went to some bar after, me and my friend, because we're like, we were just so stunned. And just to see just the emotional high to the emotional low was wild. But I will always remember just that experience of going through and just the crowd, and it's incredible.
I mean, at the end of the day, the Raptors were the 2019 NBA champions, and that'll never change for us in history. So we can go to sleep at night knowing that game 5 was worth, sometimes the disappointment is what makes the victory ever so sweet. So
fair point.
Next question. What is the most wild experience you've ever had while working on television that maybe nobody saw or really knew about, that you completely landed on your feet with? Like, just, it was so like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe we just pulled that off.
Oh, that we pulled off. That didn't turn out bad.
You pulled off, yes.
Wow. I mean, there's been situations where, we're doing live. I've had so many, especially at TSN, where we used to do this NFL show on Sundays, and it was so chaotic, so absolutely chaotic. And, one of the producers was, a great guy, a huge NFL fan, and he'd almost try to run it like Red Zone, where we just didn't have the manpower to run it like Red Zone. And so we're making changes on the fly like crazy and stuff. And it was just like stuff where, you're telling you behind the scenes, I'm getting so much traffic in my ear and I'm talking to my analyst and I've not seen any of these highlights. And that would kind of be a situation where after every Sunday, I was just fried. And the show could have been like 25 minutes. It could have been 7 minutes. It could have been 45 minutes, just depending on when the last game ended. But I was always emotionally and just like physically fried, because that was always the hardest show for me to do, just because there was just sometimes excessively too many changes, but just so many changes. And you're the only traffic cop there. My analyst is just waiting for me to tee him up. And so that was always a tough one. But there's been a lot of situations too where we haven't made it through, but we won't get into those. But those Sundays were consistently one where I was always like, okay, we got through this, even though, we probably shouldn't have.
What is a challenge that you had to face during your career, whether it be because of something outside of work or something within work, that you had a difficult time dealing with? And what did you learn from that experience? And how did you realize, I guess, like from learning that experience, that later on in the future, that what the experience taught you was very valuable?
It's a good question. There's been a bunch of things I would say. I think there's some things just on like, on a work level, preparation. There's been times where I was like, I like to think now that I over prepare, especially if I'm hosting. I'm always over preparing because, you know, again, you're the last line of defense. Things can happen. It's not scripted, and you need to have some information. And I think over time, as I've done it, I've gotten better at that, where I can, you know, pull to a quick story if we need to kill 30 seconds or 45 seconds, and I can give a little nugget of information or something like that. I would say probably one of the most difficult things that happened in my career was, I think it was like 2013, it might have been, where, you know, me and Gurdeep Ahluwalia, who was at CP24 at the time, we were hosting SportsCenter together for the first time. He was just kind of filling in at that time. And, you know, it was two South Asian broadcasters hosting SportsCenter. It was probably the first time that's ever happened. And we just got, you know, pelted with, you know, a lot of racial comments and backlash and so forth. And then there were people, the majority of the people who were supporting us and then retweeting and going after, you know, it was just a whole like Twitter war. And I think, again, you got to think about the timeline here. This is not today. You're seeing that all the time. And back then, I don't think it was as prevalent. And just our sensitivity, I think, to social media was different. I thought differently about social media back then, where I kind of cared what people thought. And it was difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It was really difficult because I was like, man, I was early in my TSN career. I was young, and I was like, I made it to this level, and I was so excited to be there. And I was like, is this how it's always going to be? And, you know, am I always going to be the brown guy at TSN? And that's not what I wanted to be. I just wanted to be, you know, an anchor at TSN. And so I think for me, that was a moment where I was really, I mean, I can't speak for Gurdeep, but for myself, I mean, that really affected me at the time. And it also helped me in a sense too, because it took me a little while, but I kind of got to the point where I'm like, I don't really care what people say on social media. I don't go searching my name or anything like that. I respect the fact that people are not going to like me, which is fine. And some people will. And I have people I don't like the same sort of thing, but I just don't put as much stock into what people say anymore. And I think that's been a good thing for me mentally. You know, having to be on those platforms. I think for some people it's a lot easier than others, and some people like that, you know, they do like the back and forth. For me, not so much. And it's just one of those things that I kind of learned early on for myself. I think the people who really matter are my bosses and my coworkers, family, and that's about it. And so I try to do that and try to keep that mindset. I think it's really helped me, because it kind of just eased a lot of the pressure off of, oh, I need everybody to like me. Because one bad comment, like you get like 10 good comments and one bad comment, the one bad comment really sticks with you, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas now, I really don't care. So I think I'd look back, and that was probably one of the moments where, in hindsight, it was maybe a beneficial thing for me to have, for that to happen to me at that time, just because it allowed me to grow and just kind of recalibrate the way I thought about things.
For sure. And especially something like that, you compare the times, even, it's not like it's 20 or 30 years, but even there's a lot that has changed in 8 or 9 years with social media and with that subject matter. And especially considering the fact that it was early on in your career, I can only imagine how detrimental that would have felt in the moment, but knowing that it maybe built a bit of resilience in you early on is something that's important, because now, you know, you're Nabil Karim, you're SportsCenter anchor. You're not just, the token guy or whatever, because you've built such an amazing reputation with all the hard work that you've put in. And it's because of what you've done, not just because of who you are, what people see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again, I look at today's world on social media. It's crazy, man. It's so crazy. And I feel for a lot of the people out there. I mean, there's a lot of people fighting the good fight too, which is amazing. But it's always going to be hate. And I think when you look at Twitter, it can be such a great tool. Like, it's a great news resource at times. It can be a fun tool also, but at the same time, there's a lot of negativity, man. And I just, at this point in my life, I don't have enough time for it. You know, I have time for my work. I come home with my family. I got my kids. And for me to be in the right headspace with them is to give them all my effort and not sit on Twitter all day. And that's just, again, personally works for me. And that's what I figured when I kind of went through that. And it took me some time. Don't get me wrong. It took me some time. Like, I used to check my mentions all the time, and like, you know, in between like shows and I don't do that anymore. And you realize too, when you do a lot of TV, that things are going to happen. We've talked about it throughout this show, is that, you know, it's live TV. Things are going to happen. You're going to have good shows. You're going to have a few bad shows, and you got to learn from it. It's just like anybody else who goes to any other job. Unfortunately, ours, in a sense, not unfortunately, but the way it is that it's public. And so we do our best, and people at home don't really care, or don't really even know that you're having a bad day or what's going on in your life, or you're sick or whatever. You just got to be there. So, and beyond when that red light is on. So, just kind of things you learn. But again, I think, yeah, I just kind of recalibrated the way I think about what people think about you, criticisms, all that sort of stuff.
What's your favorite thing about being a dad? And there may be a lot of things, but.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Man, that's a tough one. I just the love that your kids give you, you know, everyone always says, especially when your first kid is born, like like, how does it feel? How do you can ask as many people as you want. But the best piece of advice I got was, hey, listen, nobody can explain to you what it feels like when your kid has passed to you for the first time. And that's so true. It is so true. And, you know, things just become more simple, I think, when they don't become more simple generally, but like just for certain things, you know, your outlook on life becomes a lot more simple, because I look at my son, I talk to him, have these conversations with him, and now my daughter too, who's now speaking and communicating and so forth. Life is so simple for the men. They don't care for a lot of things. You know, you get them these toys or whatever, and this and that, they have all this stuff. And my son rather play with the box and be creative and build like a castle with a bunch of boxes rather than all. And so it's just the love that they give, you know, how genuine and pure they are. It keeps you so level-headed. And I think even for me, for work, when I come home, I used to come up, if I had a bad show or something, it really, really bothered me. It'd weigh on me. And then I had Adam, and everything changed, because I come home and I'm so excited to be home and to play with him. And the same thing with Hannah now, my daughter. And when I come home, I just let it all go. And there's days where it's harder than other days, but, you know, for the most part, when I come home, I want to be present with them. And I think that's kind of the cool thing, is just they're growing so fast. They're going to be 6 and 2 in June. And that is my life. Like work is my passion and I love it, but my life is centered around my family, and it's always going to be that way. And so they're always first. And just the everyday, if you want to call it the everyday grind, because it is a grind with young kids. You're 15, you don't know that yet. But yeah, no, the everyday grind with the kids is something, but it's just the love that they give you is undescribable.
I can barely even imagine. Like, it even just makes me feel a bit emotional just to think about that. You know, you grew up your whole life, and if you have siblings or you have a big family, and you're like, oh yeah, it's all good. And your family, you always think of as the people that are right there beside you, you're living at home with, and then you have your own family. And then you have your own kids, like, wow, like this human being really came from, you know, my wife and I, like, this is now my life. And just to, and even I think how that ties in with sports and the work you do is like being able to share those moments, or when work is tough, you know, that you can go home and they're there, or you get to watch that game together, or that experience, or being there to watch them play sports for the first time. And I know that from my personal experience, like that's something that's so impactful. And for you, I can only imagine, you know, what it's like staying up late to watch the game, or, you know, being there to take them to their first ever NBA game or NHL or whatever it is. And those are moments that you just cherish forever, like no matter what happened at the game.
Totally. And we're going through that right now with Adam. He's playing T-ball right now. He played hockey this past year. They have a great hockey program here in Avon. So he was playing hockey this year, and just to be able to watch him, and I'm living through him, and it's just so exciting to see it. You know, I don't care if he becomes a pro athlete, or I don't care about any of that stuff. I just want him to have a lot of fun, and he's having a lot of fun. And it just, it warms your heart, man. It's so cool to see him go through that process. So yeah, just going back, I mean, there's this one story I have when you ask about being a dad and what that feels like. And you know, the greatest thing about it, Adam was in this class. He might've been, this is back in Toronto, 3.5, 4. I think he was 4 at that time. And he'd been going to Montessori. He has all these friends in Montessori. He's super excited, loves all his friends. And we're in this class, so it's a separate class, a separate thing we're doing, and all the kids are sitting in a circle, and the parents are sitting around them just on the outside. And the instructor's asking all the kids different questions. And Adam's question came up, and it was like, "Hey, Adam, who's your best friend?" So I'm expecting him to say one of his buddies from school that he's crazy about, talks about all the time. And he just turns around and he goes, "My dad." And that one hit me so hard because I was like, oh my God, I didn't expect him to say that. We joke around about it all the time. And I was like, Adam, you're my best friend. And he would always say we're best buddies. We had this best buddies club, the cool guy club, we used to call it. And for him to say it though, in that setting and just so quickly be like, yeah, my dad, I tried not to choke up a little bit, but I was choking up a little bit and I was trying to like be all cool about it. But I definitely had an emotional moment there. So those are the kind of the things that you get with these kids. And that's why it's, the best thing in the world being a parent and for me being a dad.
No doubt. And that story makes me choke up a little bit just to hear that, the bond that is there, that maybe you don't even realize it fully until you're in that setting. And it's like, oh, wow, that small little moment just had a ginormous impact on and made me realize what I have. That's just, wow.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man.
Well, with that, Nabil, I want to thank you for having been on today's episode. It was super fantastic to get to talk to you about your journey from TSN to ESPN, talk about life as a dad, and to talk about just what it's like working behind the scenes and in the most chaotic environments within the sports media industry.
I appreciate you for having me. Congratulations on this show. You're doing a great job, man.
Well, I really appreciate that. And thank you for listening to today's episode with SportsCenter anchor at ESPN, Nabil Karim.